Hello everybody, Raven Knight here, and welcome back to our new installment on the parables of Jesus. I know it's been a little while, guys. I had to skip a week because of my birthday and all that kind of stuff, but we are back now, and we're going to continue this wonderful series we've been in. If you have a Bible, and I hope you do, go ahead and turn to the book of Matthew. It is the very first book of the New Testament and the first of the Gospels, and you're going to turn to chapter 25. So head to Matthew chapter 25. While we get there, I want to say thank you guys for coming back. I know that this is a bit of a weird series for my channel for a lot of you guys out there, but it is something very important to me. I am a Christian and I believe firmly in spreading my faith with others. And since my channel has grown so much and it's got such an audience, it would be irresponsible of me not to share my faith with others, as that is my calling as a man of faith and a man of God, to share my faith. So that is why I do this series. And for those of you who are brand new, welcome. I hope you get something out of this. I have plenty other series besides this one if you want to sink your teeth into them. So definitely take the time to look at those if you'd like. And for those of you who are veterans who have watched this series before or have watched some of my series before, welcome back. And I hope that today is as meaningful to you as all the others are. Thank you so much for being here. Now, let's jump right into it. Today we're going to be in a very interesting parable. Some of you may have heard it before, some of you may have not. It's not one of Jesus's most popular parables because it's not one that gets talked about a great deal, but it is one that I think we all need to pay attention to, especially those of us who call ourselves Christian. If you are someone who calls yourself a Christian today, if you consider yourself a Christian, wonderful. I want you to hear this parable and really consider it. I want you to hear this parable and really consider it. And if you don't call yourself a Christian, that's fine. This parable will still have meaning to you, I believe. Okay? So let's go ahead and jump right into it. We are in Matthew chapter 25, verse 14. This parable has a few names. You could call it Jesus tells the parable of the loaned money, or it could be the parable of the servants. There's a lot of ways you could look at this parable, but Jesus has a story to tell us, okay? So let's not get into any preamble. I just want to jump right into this, okay? Let's get started. Verse 14. This is Jesus talking. Again, it will be the kingdom of heaven. It will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. To one he gave 5 bags of gold, and to another 2 bags, and to another 1 bag, each according to his ability. Now, what's the importance of that phrase? What's important about that? A couple of points to make here. Some of your Bible translations may say talents or bags of silver, but what he's giving is essentially money. A lot of money. The word talent does not refer to physical gifts, but rather a unit of measurement in the Greek talenton, which roughly means about 20 years worth of wages. Yeah, these bags are each worth a small fortune. Now, let's talk about this other part, how he gave out the money. To one servant he gave 5 bags. To the other 2, and then the other one. And some of you might think that's not very fair, but there's a fundamental truth that you may have overlooked. This is not their money. This is not the master saying, here you guys go, 5 bags of silver for you, 5 bags of gold for you, here you get, use these how you like. They're for you to keep. No, he's not doing that. This is him saying, take this and put it to use for me. Take this and be responsible with it. I'm coming back to collect it. Now that's a huge responsibility. And he gave them a certain amount according to their ability. Have you ever heard the excuse, you gave me too much to do, I couldn't handle it? No, with God, that's not a problem. God knows your limits. He knows what you can and cannot do. He's not going to give you what you can't handle. And here, the master in the parable is giving accordingly. So don't start off with well, master was obviously being cruel and unfair. He was not, but you're going to see that in a minute. You're going to see one of these servants pull that, okay? So keep your eyes on that. This is going to get very interesting. Let's move on to verse 16, and we're going to push through this. All right, we're going to go all the way to verse 23, okay? So follow along with me on this one. Here we go. Verse 16. The man who would receive 5 bags of gold went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 bags more. So also the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more. But the man who had received 1 bag went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I have gained 5 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. The man with 2 bags of gold also came. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 bags of gold. See, I have gained 2 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. So let's take a moment to appreciate that. You've been faithful with a few things. I'll put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. I get asked a lot, what are we supposed to do as Christians? How can we be better Christians? Should we quit our jobs and interests and go and do mission in other places? Well, not necessarily, because God has given us purpose and abilities with the intention of us using them to further his kingdom. Maybe that's in the mission field, maybe it's in some other way. But wherever God wants you, he's given you the skills, abilities, and purpose necessary to further his kingdom. My pastor gave a simple 3-part explanation to this parable that I love. The 3 parts, okay? Number 1, everything God has given you, it originally belonged to God. So everything you have, God gave to you out of his mercy. Everything you have is God's. Second, everything you have needs to be used for God's glory in his kingdom, because it's his originally anyway. And third, God will come back one day to take account for what you did with what he gave you. So let me repeat those. Number 1, everything you have, God gave. Everything you have, God gave. Everything you have that God gave you needs to be used to further God's glory and kingdom. And number 3, God will come back one day to take account for what you did with what he gave you. You know what I mean? At the beginning of the parable, Jesus says that the rich man entrusts his servants with his wealth. He didn't give away money. He entrusted them with this wealth to make good with it. But can you do that? But what can you do with it while I'm away is the question. And that's what God asks us. I'm gone right now. I'm working up in heaven, getting everything ready for you. I'm getting everything ready for you up here. I've given you talents to do with as I need. What are you going to do with them? For example, I've given you a great talent with video games. How can you use that? I've given you a talent for public speaking. How can you use that? Guys, Jesus has ascended. Like I said, preparing heaven for us. And in the meantime, he's given us purpose, ability, skills, and resources to do what? To further his kingdom. To bring more people to Christ. To enrich the church, the world, to spread his message. These gifts came from God and were given to you, and now you have to ask, what are you doing with them? And here we see 2 servants who have invested what they were given and doubled what they'd been given. That's crazy cool. And the master rewards them for it. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share in your master's happiness. This is the response we want to hear from God, right? When I meet God again, I want him to say that to me. I've given you a little bit to work with, and you did great things with it. Now come join me in paradise. That's what I want him to say, you know? That's what I want to hear from God. But there's one more servant. Let's hear how the third servant talks. Join me in verse 24. This is interesting, guys. Sorry, I got a bit of a stuffy head. Then the man who had received 1 bag of gold came. Master, he said, I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid and went out and hid your gold in the ground. See here what belongs to you. His master replied, you wicked, lazy servant. So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed? Well then, you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. Okay. Suddenly we have a turn, don't we? Some people will hear what this servant says and they won't see the problem with it. They'll think, okay, yeah, he didn't invest it, but he didn't lose it either. He kept it safe. He saved it for his master. What's wrong with that? Sure, he didn't double it. He didn't invest it, but he also didn't lose it. He has it. What's wrong with this? There are several things wrong. There are several things wrong with this. Let's break this down. Number one, first thing wrong. If you want to write this down, you can. First thing wrong, he insults his master. He insults his master. Read the opening line. Master, I knew that you are a hard man, some translations may say cruel, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. What does that mean? It's basically calling the master a thief and a cruel slave driver. You're taking what isn't yours. You're demanding me work for you, but not giving me what I need to do it. You're a cruel man. You're a hard man. Which leads into the second issue. Number two, he makes pitiful excuses. He makes pitiful excuses. You know, you don't normally make excuses unless you know you've done wrong, and in this case, he knows what he did was wrong. The servant was given a task, and he not only didn't do it, but is now claiming it's the master's fault. Because he's the kind of slave-driving, cruel bastard who would force his servants to do near impossible things without considering them. Saying, you reap what you do not sow. You harvest what you do not cultivate. You're putting it all on your servants, master. That's all on us. And now you want us to invest in your money? Here's the funny thing. The other two servants didn't make these complaints. You notice that? Before you start thinking maybe he has a point, notice how the other two servants didn't make these complaints. They got to work and got it done. But this other servant, who only had one bag of gold, mind you, only had one bag of gold to work with, didn't even bother. He didn't even try. He just hit it. Third issue. He does not know God. He does not know his master. Think of all the ways God is described in the Bible, shown and demonstrated. Does he give tasks that his servants can't handle? Sure, they might be hard, but does he not see his servants through? Moses, David, Elijah, Esther, all these figures, all servants of God, all given very challenging tasks, but God saw them through all of it. And Jesus says himself in Matthew 11, my yoke is easy and burden light. He is not the kind of man who will put more on you than you can handle. There's no reason to be afraid. And yet, how does this servant describe him? He says, well, I was afraid of you. I was afraid of all the hard stuff you were going to make me do with that money. Meaning he never really knew his master and therefore never really knew God. He never really understood Jesus. Why? That's the scary part. He has no relationship with him. He claims to be a servant of God. He claims to be a servant of his master, but he does not know his master. He doesn't have any relationship with him. And then the fourth issue. He took no action. Consider for a moment that if everything the servant said is true, if everything the servant said about his master was true, and that his master was a hard and cruel man, what good was hiding the money going to do? The master was still going to come back and see that his trust and his commands had been ignored. That's why the master responds, so you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed, then you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. And that's a great point. If you aren't willing to do what I ask with my money out of fear, then at least get someone else to do it. At the very least, it would have been doing what I asked, even if indirectly. But no, you didn't even do that. You did nothing. Why? Because more than just wicked, the servant is lazy, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. But I want to really hammer this in for you guys. This servant's response is very much the act of a man who, one, has no relationship with his master, two, is making pitiful excuses, three, took no action when he could have taken some degree of action, and then finally insults his master to his face. Does this sound like a person with any kind of relationship to God or his master? His master in the parable is God. I hope you understand that. And this servant is a lazy individual who didn't take action when he should have. Do you understand the message? Well, don't worry, we'll come back to it in a minute. Let's go to verse 28. Let's wrap up this parable. Verse 28, the master says, "So take the bag of gold from him and give it to the one who has 10 bags. For whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have, will be taken from them. And throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." Let's talk about that judgment. Take the bag of gold from him and give it to the one who has 10. For whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have, will be taken from them. So what does that mean? What's Jesus trying to say here? I wrestled with this for a while. It seems a very odd judgment to pass. But consider this. A few months ago, I fell asleep laying on my right arm. When I woke up, I could not feel my arm. It was like I just had a dead hunk of meat hanging from my shoulder. And it took almost 10 whole minutes before I could get full control of it again. When you crush and smother your limb, they stop working. You remove the connection to them that your heart needs to pump blood. It's the same with gifts from God. If you smother God's gifts, if you hide them or don't use them for their intended purpose, eventually you stop feeling them. They go away. God removes them. But unlike your limb, God's gift is given to another, because he who has more will be given. Now, how does that work? I'd like to jump to a verse in Esther if we could. I plan to do a whole series on this book, but I think that there's a verse here that will fit well for how to explain this. In Esther 4, verse 4. Let me give you some background real quick. Esther is a Jew who just became the queen of all Persia. She is married to Emperor Xerxes of Persia. Now, Mordecai, her cousin, has just found out that there is a plot to kill all the Jews, and the only person who can save them is King Xerxes. But the only way to get that news to King Xerxes is if Esther goes to see him. The problem is, you don't just go to see the king whenever you want to. Not even the queen can do that. You can't just pop in. You could be executed for popping in uninvited. But Esther has to take a chance. She has to go and hope that the king will be merciful and let her speak. Esther's scared, and she tells Mordecai, I can't do this. I can't go to see the king. I'll die. So we get to Esther 4, verse 14, where Mordecai says, "For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows, but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this." Esther's gift from God was her beauty. She was stunningly gorgeous. So gorgeous that when Xerxes looked at her, he said, "That's my wife. I want that one. That's the one I want." And this gift is what gave her the chance to be brought before Xerxes and become his wife. However, when the time came for her to make use of this gift, she was scared to do it, tempted to hide it away, like the bad servant. Mordecai warns her very clearly, this is the chance you've been given. You can invest this gift you've been given, or you can hide it away, and you and your father's house will be destroyed. But salvation for the Jews will come from somewhere else. Guys, I want to make this 100% clear. God has a plan. He has a goal in mind for us and the world. And you being a part of it is a blessing. But even if you back out of the blessing, it's not going to stop God from achieving his ends. If I say, "God, you know what? Thanks for inviting me, but I'm not going to help you with your plan. I'm not going to do what you want me to do." God is not about to go, "Oh man, what am I going to do? Cliff said, they said no. I can't do it. Raven said no. Lark said no. I can't. How can I? No. God's got a plan, and he's going to go, okay, you don't want to be part of it. All right, well, move aside. Get out of my way. God has given me, you, all of us, potential, the chance, a purpose to do something amazing. But if you choose not to act on it, then it will go to another. You? Jesus answered that in verse 30. Throw them out into the darkness where there will be wailing and gnashing of teeth. That is the description of hell, my friends. Jesus says it himself, for not all who call me Lord will be saved. Only those who do the will of my Father. Those who are willing to act in accordance with God's design and plan. There are a lot of people out there who call themselves Christians. A lot of people out there who say, oh yeah, Jesus is Lord. Yeah, I believe in Jesus, yeah. But they don't live as Christians. They don't act according to God's plan. They don't invest with God's purpose. They pay lip service to God. They like to talk a big talk. But they don't use their talents or their gifts or their purpose that God gave them to further his ends. And Jesus lays out in this parable why that's dangerous. Guys, I'm going to be real. You're going to meet God one day, whether you die and head to heaven or whether he comes back to meet you, whichever one comes first. But when that day comes, you need to ask yourself, what have you done in the time before then? What are we doing in our time before then? Are we the lazy servants who's hiding our gifts away? Or are we the good servants who are putting it to use and furthering God's kingdom? Before you panic and say, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, don't panic. God has given you all that you need to do. God gave you the gifts you need. He gave you the talents, the resources, and the chances. And it's up to you to act on them. It is up to you to put them into practice. And you're probably thinking, well, Raven, I don't know what gifts I have. I don't know what gifts I have. I don't know what talents I have. That's something you may need to talk to with your pastor, with a trusted disciple, with a friend, a believer. You may need to do some introspection. You may not have sat down to think about what God has given you. But I assure you, God has a plan for you. And he wants you to be a part of it. He's given you your talents. He's given you your bag of gold. And he's saying, hey, I'm going to be gone for a little while. While I'm gone, see what you can do with this. See what you can make with this. Don't hide it. Don't crush it or smother it or put it away. Put it to use. And if you can't think of a way to put it to use, bring it to your pastor and say, Pastor, I'm scared. I don't know what to do with this. Bring it to a trusted brother or sister in Christ and say, I'm not sure what to do with this. Do you know what that lazy servant could have done? He could have gone to the other two servants and said, hey guys, I don't know where to start. What do I do? There's so many ways he could have been productive, but he didn't. Don't be the lazy servant. Don't be the lazy servant. Thank you so much for listening to this parable, guys. I hope it meant something to you. I hope you got something out of it. We got only one more to go. We're going to do one more parable, and then we're going to wrap this all up. Are you guys excited? I'm excited. It's going to be awesome. I hope you guys have been enjoying this series. Let me know what you think down in the comments section, and I will see you in my next video. Take care.